everyone, welcome to Briar Haus Writes. I'm Becky Parker, and today it is my honor to be able to have with us Andrea Firth. She is a writer, educator, editor. She can do it all. Andrea, thank you so much for agreeing to be on Briar Haus Writes.
Great. Thanks, Becky. Thanks for having me here.
Andrea, tell us a little bit about what led you to writing, and in particular, creative nonfiction writing.
Sure. So my career has had a kind of circuitous past. I do, or circuitous journey. My father was the editor and publisher of a couple of local newspapers. So I was exposed to journalism early on, but he wasn't college educated. He wasn't a writer. He was just very entrepreneurial. And I originally started more as a technical writer. I had worked in clinical research, so I did a lot of medical writing. I set up a medical writing business. And then from there, we moved to California, and really as a way to like get to know the area and make some friends that were outside of just other mothers. There was a fellow in town who had launched a local newspaper. So I went and just signed on to be a reporter, and I threw myself into journalism. Was kind of on the job training, and it was great. I met a lot of people. Then I started writing for regional and national magazines. And then at age 50, I went back to graduate school to get my MFA in creative nonfiction writing. And I always had wanted to do it, and it was a good time. My kids were heading off to college. So that's really, I'm only like, 12, 13 years into the creative writing part of it. And that's how I got here.
Have you looked back in the past and just be amazed at how far you've come?
Um, I wanted to be a writer from my teenage years, but I also wanted to pay my bills and a lot of school loans. So I took a practical approach and took a job in corporate America. But I do feel like all of the steps I took connected, because when I did move to magazine writing, I did do a lot of healthcare pieces, and
Mhm.
so it connected back to the medical writing. And then journalism, journalism really boomed in the 90s, where it expanded beyond the five W's and became much more creative, where you could set the scene and you could insert yourself into pieces. So I started doing that, and then just graduate school had always been a dream.
I'm glad you did those things. Tell us about um, what is your writing process and how much does research go into each piece?
Okay, so my writing process, while I do, I'm primarily an essayist, and many of my essays incorporate personal narrative, and I do look to the past. I often find old photos are good prompts, but I'm also very inspired by what happens in the everyday, just really everyday moments. So I'll often, something will happen, I'll capture it, I'll put it into a document, and I won't quite know where I'm going to go with it.
Mhm.
And over time, I just find myself, I'll keep adding to that document when other ideas come up or other events or interactions that kind of could fit in there. So my document just grows. I don't really always know where it's going. And then at a certain point, that starts to become clear. And that's when I'll go back to it and I'll really try and shape the essay. There are times when, something happens and I've got the beginning, middle, and end in mind. But for the most part, I find it's like a building process.
Do you have a particular place that you write that you're more comfortable with every day, or do you have a set schedule?
I'm a morning person. I swim 3, 4 times a week early at like 6.
Mhm.
And then I sit down and I'm most active with writing between like 8 and 2 or 3. And then in the later afternoons, I tend to do more of reading and editing, although I edit all along the way. I'm pretty busy with that.
What drew you to actually writing essays? Because a lot of people struggle with those, and what led you to feel most comfortable in writing those?
So that really was a function of graduate school. I had read essays all along the way. Like I'm a big New York Times reader. They have published essays. I hadn't really read essay collections though. And so because I specialized in creative nonfiction, essay and memoir were a big focus. And I can tell you the exact essay. It was an essay by Joanne Beard, where she recounts, there actually, very, very sadly, there was a massive shooting at the university where she worked. And she had other things going on in her life. Her marriage was falling apart. She had squirrels in the attic. And she ends up weaving all of this together alongside this very tragic event and incorporates what's going on in her personal life. And I read that, and then I was just like, this is what I want to do.
Well, speaking of reading, would you care to read some of your work for us, Andrea?
The working title for this is called The Seventh Charm. Most of what I remember about Albert comes from a few fading black and white photos. 1965. We sit side by side on a bench at the wooden picnic table in the corner of the kitchen. My older brother, Jeff, is behind the camera. I've just had a bath and I've combed my short bangs straight down on my forehead the way I like them. My mother, caught off guard, looks down, rubbing her eyes, and seems tired. My father's expression is distant. Albert's smile shows off his two big front teeth, good looking already at 8 and blonde unlike the rest of us. He's there in the summer when I'm pushing a Raggedy Ann doll in a small plastic stroller through the living room. Albert stands in the background holding a large bouncy ball behind his back, his head and shoulders missing from the frame. He's there on the bed in the winter, the three of us in pajamas, Jeff with his head buried in a pillow, me sitting on the edge and Albert in motion between us, a blur. He's there at my third birthday party in May. My best friend Mary Therese and I are at the center of the camera's eye, wearing party hats and blowing those horns that roll out with each breath and snap back. Albert stands behind us, leaning on the dining room chair and staring at the cake on the table, his face half hidden by a baseball cap. 1962. My mother struggled to have another child after my brother Jeff was born. A couple of miscarriages, 8 years of trying, and then unexpectedly I arrived. My mother's more fertile friends threw her a shower and passed along their used baby furniture, clothes, and supplies. Albert arrived in 1964. I was 2.5 and Jeff 11. Albert, age 7, fit right between us. A foster child matched with our family through Catholic Charities. The backstory. Albert's parents had been arrested for robbery. The police found him and his young brother left alone in the family's apartment. Albert lived with us for almost 2 years while his parents did time. I have a memory. Albert has a bird, a yellow parakeet, which surprises me because animals, pets, are not my mom's thing. We keep it in a cage in the rec room. One day the bird gets loose and flies throughout the house. Jeff, Albert, and I chase it from landing spot to landing spot, laughing and screaming. Finally, when the parakeet rests on the curtain rod in the living room window, Albert jumps up on the couch and grabs it. The curtains and rod come tumbling down with a loud clatter. Chaos like this typically doesn't sit well with my mother, but she isn't mad. Albert gently carries the rescued bird and puts it back in its cage. Once released from prison, Albert's mother is allowed visits with him. My father drives him from our house to the suburbs to the meaner streets of West Philadelphia, where he spends Saturday nights at her apartment. My parents, especially my mother, find the situation difficult, trying to balance the boy between two families, two worlds. And so does Albert. When he returns on Sundays, dinner is fraught. Albert, sit up. He slouches. Albert, elbows off the table. He leans. Albert, finish your dinner. He doesn't. Not long after that, Albert is back with his mother and gone from Sunday dinners. One more memory. I see Albert in what he wears most days, a play army helmet covered in plastic camouflage leaves, and the white button-down shirt of his school uniform, minus his toothy grin. He sits in the passenger seat of my father's beige VW Beetle, looking straight ahead. I lean on the front screen door looking out across the sloping lawn and watch as my father places a small black suitcase in the back seat. My mom is nowhere in sight. We live on a steep hill, and the view of the street feels off balance, like a picture frame knocked crooked. I hear the engine stutter as my father puts the car in gear. The next weekend, my brother goes on a camping trip with the Boy Scouts. As my father packs his sleeping bag and duffel in the back of the VW and Jeff climbs into the passenger seat, I stand by the front door screaming, unconsolable. At 4 years old, I think he might not come back. I grew up with a handful of foster children. One at a time, they came and went. My brother and I weren't given any heads up or reason. It's never been clear to me why my parents fostered. They were Catholic, and many of their friends and our relatives had big families with 5, 6, and 7 kids. Maybe they felt it was expected. Maybe it was pressure from the church. They never said. After Albert came the foster babies. Again, surprising because babies were not my mom's thing. She preferred children once they became mini versions of their adult selves, when they could get dressed and go to sleep on their own, when they could put their dishes in the sink, when they could play Monopoly without cheating. For a couple years, a parade of foster tots arrived for short stays, weeks, months. I'm sure my mother carried the bulk of caring for these children. My parents had a traditional marriage born in the 50s with responsibilities split along gender lines. My father worked long hours, 6 or 7 days a week, and I guarantee he never changed a diaper or made a meal. Bobby was small for his age and old enough to be walking, but barely managed to crawl. He screamed hysterically whenever his diaper was changed. My mother worried that he'd been abused. David, a plump-faced, blonde, blue-eyed baby, stayed for several months. His mother with postpartum depression, his father overwhelmed with caring for his siblings alone. David liked to lean out of the high chair in the kitchen to look at his reflection in the stainless steel toaster. We called him David in the toaster, and there were others. By the time I was 6, I was used to seeing kids come and go. I never felt like these little ones got more attention than I did. And I don't remember feeling special because I got to stay. I knew they were temporary. This was how things worked. When I headed off to school full time, the foster children stopped coming with no explanation or discussion. After my mother passed away, I asked my aunt, her good friend, if she knew why. I don't know, she said. It just seemed that for a while each time we came to visit, there would be a new child there, and then there weren't any more. We didn't have any further contact with the children after they left. It was as if they disappeared, except for Albert. We got one last glimpse of him. 1968. Albert, now about 10, shows up at the front door on a warm Sunday afternoon with his cousin, who's about the same age. They're both wearing Phillies baseball caps. The visit isn't planned, and when my parents ask how they got to the house, Albert says they took the bus from the city and walked the mile from the closest bus stop. Oh, yeah, my mom knows. She's okay with it, he says. But I can see that my parents find the excursion beyond a 10-year-old's domain. We stand around the living room. My parents ask more questions. Then my father drives the boys back to the city. I'm reminded of that yellow bird that got rescued and put back in its cage. 1987. At 25, I'm getting ready to move to Chicago for a new job. My parents and I are having dinner when the phone rings and my father answers. The man on the other end of the line is a Catholic priest who runs a homeless shelter at the Jersey Shore, and Albert, now 29, is there. The priest says Albert has bounced between being homeless and incarcerated for years. He's struggled with alcohol and drug addiction. Now he's gone through detox and found Jesus. It's not clear what motivates him to call or how he knows how to reach us, but it feels like the priest orchestrated it. My father and Albert speak briefly. When my father puts down the receiver, he shakes his head. He says it was hard to understand what Albert was saying. My mother stands at her post by the sink with her back to us, blowing the smoke from her cigarette out the window. We go quiet. My memories of Albert are distant and vague, but I have questions. I want to know what his Sunday dinners were like after he left. I want to know if his mother cooked and cared for him, if she paid attention. I want to know if he had thought about us or if he felt that we abandoned him. He reminds me of a wounded bird stuck in a new cage. I used to find my mother to be an unlikely foster mother. She wasn't overly demonstrative, not huggy and full of I love yous. She didn't like disorder or mess. She wasn't into arts and crafts or make-believe or baking cookies. She was athletic and organized, strong. She valued independence, and that was what she worked hardest to instill in us, the ability to stand on our own. She let us make our own choices and our own mistakes, and she could keep an arm's length when someone needed it. I wonder how Albert saw my mom. Here's what I see now. She brought stability. She was there for him. And when it was time for him to move on, she let go. She did that for all of them. Maybe that's why she was a foster mom, because she could do it. For a while after my own children were born, I thought about fostering. I'm good with babies and toddlers, and I like the idea of having more kids in the house. We had finger paints, board games, a teepee, and stacks of children's books. We made Play-Doh from flour and food coloring, puppets from cardboard rolls with glue, yarn, and glitter, and bread from scratch. I don't mind a mess. I went as far as calling an agency, but I didn't follow through. The idea faded away, or maybe I pushed it aside. I wasn't able to take on that risk to foster and feel the pain of giving a child back. I can imagine what it must have been like for my mother to spend time raising those kids and then routinely handing them over, saying goodbye again and again. I couldn't do it. I'm not my mother. My mother carried the emotional load of caring for those children and understood the limits to the relationships, how it would start and how it would end. Here I find her strength. Here I see why she chose to be a temporary part of their lives. Here I come to understand why, because she could hold them close and let them go. She said little about them as time passed on, but I believe she held on to them in her own way. 2010. When my mother passes away, I inherit her gold charm bracelet. I've always loved the way the bracelet dangled loosely on her slender wrist and the delicate tinkling sound the charms made as they touched. The paper-thin charms are silhouettes of boy and girl heads with the name and script on one side and a birth date on the other side. Jeff, 9/3/53 for my brother, Andrea, 5/13/62 for me, plus four more, one for each of her grandchildren. What I hadn't noticed until I held the bracelet in my hand is that there's a seventh charm on the chain. Albert, 12/28/57. Um, and I just actually I have the bracelet in a
Aw.
little tray on my desk. So like in addition to old photos, which I did use for inspiration with that essay, I think you can find objects around your house and in your life that will inspire your writing as well.
Did you, when you were writing that, did you have any just a longing for your mom? It sounds like she was just a powerful woman. Did you, how did you feel when you wrote that?
I wore the bracelet the day that we spread her cremains,
Mhm.
and we were on a boat and we were out at sea. And that's when I noticed the charm. And that really struck me because we hadn't talked about Albert in ages at that point. Um, and I do find myself, and I'm told by other people, I've written about my mom several times in a handful of essays. She's a little bit a bit of an enigma. She's not exactly what you would expect, and that's why she's actually a perfect character to write about.
How did you become an editor with the Brevity Blog?
So I've been a longtime reader of both Brevity and the blog, and I had done. It was during the pandemic I met Allison K. Williams, who is Brevity's social media manager and also an editor for the blog. She's been involved with the blog for over 15 years. And so I had done some work with her, and she asked me, she and Dinty Moore, who's the editor-in-chief of Brevity and the blog, were running the blog themselves, and it was just getting to be too much. So they recruited me and another editor, Heidi Crute, to help them with the load. We get a lot of submissions to the blog, and we publish a full-fledged essay almost every day, every weekday of the year. So it moves pretty quickly.
What kind of stories and essays are you drawn to publishing?
So Brevity Blog, well, Brevity itself is flash creative nonfiction. So all of that's the like the parent sister publication. So
Hmm.
those are all true stories, 750 words or less. The blog's mission is writing about the process of creative nonfiction writing, but there's a pretty wide range of topics that fall under that inspiration, the writing life, rejection, publishing, marketing, like really anything that connects with you writing and publishing true stories. So we're really pretty open, and I also find that there's still probably a large number of topics to be covered, but it's also limited. So we cover topics multiple times, but
Right?
because it's creative nonfiction and essay. writers can approach these topics in so many different ways. I think one of the best ways to get familiar with the blog is you can always go to the blog and you can access the whole archive, or you can have it delivered to your inbox and you just read it for a while and you'll see.
Tell us about any of your current projects that you're working on.
Okay. So just one follow-up with the blog, and maybe I should give you some of this either for follow-up or we can stick it in the chat. If anybody has any questions about the blog, I want just to put it out there, Andrea at andreafirth.com. Feel free to just email me, because if you're watching this, now we've met and we've made a connection, and I'm happy to have a correspondence with you about the blog and your idea, etc. I have a couple other things going on. Actually, this afternoon, I'm going to talk about my Substack, but before that, I offer a monthly session called Submit It Now, and it's free. And I've done it for 2 or 3 years. And I just recently took like just a couple months break, and I moved it over. And the folks at Chill Subs, I don't know if you're familiar with them, but it's a big database of literary journals. They are hosting it for me. So like this afternoon at 3 o'clock Pacific time, we meet online. It functions like a co-write, but
Hmm.
you come there with other writers in the room and we spend an hour and a half together. The first 10 to 15 minutes we do intros, and then I go over some new resource that would help with the submission process. Then we take an hour of time just all going, putting our heads down, working on submitting our work. I'm there to answer questions, and then we regroup at the end, check back in, celebrate people who have hit submit, and then we're on our way. So I do that once a month, and that's on the first Tuesday of the month. I've always highlighted on my Instagram as a reminder.
Hmm.
Uh, I run a free co-write on Wednesdays, so that's just time to come together with peers to write. So that's every Wednesday. Starts at 9:15 Pacific time. We're together for 2 hours. Again, free, and that you don't have to register. And then my newest venture is I launched a Substack, me and like how many other writers out there. And I decided it's a very focused Substack. I call it Everything Essay. And I started out, I was going to publish once a month. Now I'm publishing every 2 weeks. I read essay all the time. It's what I love to read. It's what I love to write. So I choose an essay and I link to it. I tell you where you
Hmm.
can find it. And then I spend, 3 to 5 paragraphs uh, analyzing and looking at the craft in the essay and talking about it. And then I often connect the essay with a book length read, a podcast, a movie, something else, because the whole post will be on a theme. So I launched that just a couple of months ago.
When you decided to launch it, how did it feel to actually see it alive?
I ran a writing school called Diablo Writers Workshop for 8 years, and just recently we shut that down because my partner and I loved running the school, and I taught probably over 60 classes in the 8 years and met so many people. But the one thing you do find, it's just like when you have any other full-time job, it really impinges on your own writing time.
Right.
So at this point in my writing career, I wanted to focus more time on my own writing. My partner was doing more podcasting. Um, so for 8 years, I'd done a newsletter in conjunction with my partner every 2 weeks for 8 years. And that was a more newsy newsletter, but
Mhm.
I knew the grind of a newsletter, but I also knew the power of it as like more and more people start to subscribe and interact and how your community grows. So I knew I wasn't going to want to totally let go of that. And I do find Substack, it's very user friendly. Writers are, so
They
drawn to it.
are.
I read a lot of other Substacks. It's, you could spend a lot of time talking about algorithms and how people come to it, but so far I'm finding it's pretty organic and friendly and it doesn't feel heavy-handed, and that you put up a post and people seem to come to it and they seem to comment. It's going to take time to build up the kind of readership I had from doing a newsletter for 8 years, but like I'm okay with that because I love reading essay. I love talking about it. It's just giving me a space to share what I know and love.
And a lot of people can pay for Substack or they can just be, an unpaid subscriber, but it all depends on what they want to do, which is what people really like Substack is because it does give you several opportunities for however you wish to be the reader.
I can see reasons why people do monetize their Substacks. That's not my goal.
Mhm.
Mine's really more community. And you had mentioned research.
Right.
In what I just read, that's one of the things that I do want to incorporate. Because of my journalism background and working in research before, incorporating research into essays is a passion for me. It's a big part of what I do. So like with the essay about Albert, I do want to do some exploration. I have tried to already into Catholic Charities and how many kids were sent out to foster homes and how that whole process worked. Because I couldn't access any records for Albert, but it's quite a long time ago. But I can dig in deeper into the organization and what that was like in the Philadelphia area at that time. So yeah, I really find uh, outside research adds a really wonderful other dimension to essay in particular.
I wanted to ask you about your quiet writing workshops.
Oh, thank you for asking about that. So, the quiet writing workshop that I recently led, first, it's done on Substack, and the hosting organization is called the Forever Workshops, and that actually also falls under this Chill Subs umbrella. It's part of their educational initiatives. So what I thought, I hadn't taught this way before. It's an online workshop, but it's self-paced. So
Okay.
it ran for the month of May, but it's still always available. So in May, when it launched, it's a 4-week course, a new lesson every Monday, so 4 lessons that are rolled out and they arrive directly in your inbox. But if today you wanted to go sign up and take the Forever Workshop, you could, and you just would do it at your own pace. They, the folks at the Forever Workshop do a new workshop every month, and they're 2 years into it. And the price, you just cannot beat the price. It's $10 a month.
Wow.
So for my class, the Quiet essay workshop, I would have 3 readings. They would always be short readings, flash length, because I think that just works better for there would be reading, I would analyze it, I would put in questions and prompts. There were things to make it interactive. Then there would also be kind of like an assignment, something that the writer could do in between lesson 1 and lesson 2. And then we worked all the way through. And through it, I went over each part of an essay, along with talking about why it was quiet and how to write quietly and why you would write quietly. But so that at the end, the idea was the writer had a pretty well finished essay. Um, and so the thing with quiet, I call it quiet writing, but it's really the idea of how everyday moments can inspire an essay and can lead to a deeper reflection and a realization on the part of the writer that like I did started one and I did it as a Brevity blog, and the everyday moment was inspired by I'm sitting here in my office and there's a window in front of me and a spider on a thread, tumbled down. And I'm watching this happen outside my window and the spider's scrambling and its legs are growing everywhere and then it's coming in and out. So I think, oh, I'm going to save this spider. And I go outside with like a little Tupperware. But as soon as I touch the spider that's like had been swinging in the wind, it tumbled onto the windowsill and then disappeared into a crack. So that was the start. So these are the kind of everyday moments where I encourage people like just write it down. Talk to your phone, send yourself a text, say what happened, throw it in a document and sit on it, let that percolate. And I ultimately then built that out. The essay was about grief, but it started with a spider on a thread.
I will say, Andrea, that was the first article that I've read of yours, and I was just blown away. I remember I called my sister and I said, "You have to read this. It's so beautiful." because you took something that we see every day, especially she lives in Alabama and I live here. We see them all the time, but to be able to take that story that was very simple and tie it into a very deeper um, story. It was beautiful layering, and I encourage everyone to read Andrea's work. She's wonderful. You really are. Um,
Thank you.
Andrea, thank you so much for taking the time with us at Briar Haus Writes. I wish you all the best in your writing future, and I encourage everyone to go online. Andrea, give us the website for you directly.
Oh, it's just my name, www.Andrea A. Firth. You have to use my middle initial, andreaafirth.com.
Please do so, everyone. You will love her.